This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
Also in 1922, KDKA may have had the first live sports blooper. It hired a University of Pittsburgh sophomore who had placed a $100 bet on his team to cover a football game by walking up and down the sideline with a microphone. Down by 1 point, Pitt was threatening to score in the last 30 seconds of the game when the student announcer said, "Time in, they're coming out of the huddle, they're lining up, double wing back formation, and Jack Hoozis will take it. Signal, here comes the play. Hoozis has his arms out for it, the ball's passed, and the goddamn bonehead fumbled it." He was so mortified by what he had said that he dropped the microphone and walked off, never to do another game for KDKA. Meanwhile, sports broadcasts on radio kept increasing. By 1924, college football was broadcast every week, and the audiences for major events kept steadily rising. On September 23, 1926, Dempsey fought Gene Tunney for the heavyweight title in Philadelphia, and NBC, which had formed the first network that year, broadcast the bout to its affiliated stations, while a Schenectady station sent it by shortwave to South America and England, enabling about 15 million people to hear the fight. The idea of a network was so new that the New York Times ran a map on the following day, showing the location of the stations that carried the broadcast. Then on January 1st, 1927, NBC used another multi-station hookup for the Rose Bowl football game between Stanford and Alabama, and that was followed on September 22nd by the Dempsey-Tunney rematch in Chicago, which millions heard on an NBC broadcast on more than 60 stations. The Times noted that the anticipation of the fight was so high that one department store sold more than $90,000 of radio equipment in 2 weeks. As the listening public bought more and more radios in the 1920s, the rapidly increasing popularity of the new technology was viewed warily by newspapers. At first, editors and publishers welcomed it. They believed that advertising for radio equipment would move out of technical journals to papers and magazines because they had broader audiences. In addition, some newspaper owners were so enamored with radio that they began operating stations, and the number of such stations doubled between 1922 and 1923. As for the threat of competition, that was downplayed at first. The broadcasting station never will supplant to any material extent the daily newspaper as a source of information, the editor-in-chief of the Detroit News said in 1922. 2 years later, RCA's David Sarnoff noted that the importance of radio was that it makes every listener a participant. But the radio executive added that they would still want to read a newspaper account of what they had heard because of how much more information was offered. The pros and cons of the competition issue were addressed in 1924 in Editor and Publisher, the major newspaper trade publication. The organized press has never shown excitement over any threatening aspect of radio, because no matter how much it may be controlled and commercialized, it possesses physical difficulties which, in general terms, makes it a poor competitor for the established newspaper. These difficulties include the impossibility of exercise of the selective processes of the reader. He sits at his radio and takes what is being sent, whether he likes it or not, and he takes the full dose. With the newspaper, the eye skips around on printed pages, selecting that which it desires as food. Who will be willing to sit through a radio reading of crop reports to get a craved baseball tidbit? Will men retire when women's features are being read? And will women turn to the phonograph for relief when tomorrow's racing entries are flowing from the loudspeaker? Furthermore, will transportation companies equip their cars with radio to entertain the morning and evening trippers? Broadcast radio news service is efficient when it deals with fixed, scheduled events.